The Childhood of Jesus, the Gospel of James, Biographical Gospel of the Lord, Chapter 78, The Strange Effect of the Earthquake. After this, the digging continued, and Cyrenius gave the order that all corpses which were not too greatly mutilated should be laid face downward at a designated place which was covered with mats. Only the greatly mutilated corpses were to be either cremated at once or buried 8 feet deep in the common burial place. With the less mutilated corpses, similar attempts to restore them to life should be made, as was done with the 7, and those restored to life were promptly to be brought into the inn to the 7 others. When he had given this order, Cyrenius, accompanied by Joseph, left with his aides to inspect other parts of the city. And he found, to his great surprise, that nowhere was there a citizen's house damaged in the least, while, on the other hand, not a temple of the gods was to be found anywhere which did not lay in ruins, with the exception of a single little temple which was locked and bore the inscription, "To the unknown God." When the group, along with a great following of the people, had thus wandered through the whole not unimportant little city of 80,000 inhabitants, Cyrenius asked Joseph to come over and said to him, "Listen, my highly esteemed friend and brother, I simply have to laugh to myself because of the peculiar effect of the earthquake, as well as that of the storm. Now, just look over here. Along this lane in front of us stand houses of the most wretched type of construction. Dry stones are laid one above the other without mortar, and rather unsymmetrically at that, to make a wall. One would suppose that they are hardly solid enough to withstand the shock caused by the hoof of a horse that is any more than average weight. But look, these veritable ant structures stand unharmed. Not one is damaged even in the least. While right among these truly from today until tomorrow houses, the temples, solidly built to last for thousands of years, are all rubble. What do you think of this truly strange phenomenon? Is it not obvious here that the earthquake as well as the storm must have gone about their work very intelligently? Truly, to my great joy, I must confess to you and say, if your little son with his almighty fingers did not play a little among the temples in company with the storm, my name is not Cyrenius." Here Joseph said, "Keep what you believe wholly to yourself, and be sure to speak to no one about it, for it would certainly seem to be so. Now let us go to the harbour and see if there is anything to do for me there." And Cyrenius promptly followed Joseph's advice and went down to the seashore. Chapter 79. A Judgment is Avoided. Once the party arrived at the seashore, where the harbour was constructed partly by nature and partly by the artifice of men, Cyrenius again was considerably surprised, for nowhere was any damage to be seen, except that all the mythological decorations in the pretentious ship of Cyrenius were as good as destroyed. At this, Cyrenius said to Joseph, "My very esteemed friend, under these circumstances, your sons will have little to do. See, not one vessel has received any other damage than that, which is quite welcome to me. The idols have apparently been cast into the water, especially from my ship, with which I am indeed highly pleased, for I certainly shall not have any more placed anywhere on my ship. All praise, all honour to your God for that. But for all that, I shall so reward your sons for eventual little repairs, which will have to be done here and there on the ships, as if they had done something big." Here Joseph said to Cyrenius, "O friend and brother, do not overly concern yourself with the earnings of my children. See, not because of the earnings, but just to render you a good service, I would gladly have come to your aid in such a matter of carpentry. But the Lord has helped you, and it is better that way, for now you can easily do without my help. Now that we have seen everything, and since it is already rather late in the afternoon, I suggest that we go home again and wait until tomorrow to look at anything that may still remain." Cyrenius agreed. "That is what I think, for I am very sorry indeed for the poor mother. So we must see to it now that we get home as soon as possible. I shall have a litter brought for her at once, so she may be carried home with the baby." Here the baby immediately made his presence known in back of Cyrenius, and said to him, "Be sure to do that, for the said mother has already become very tired, since she had a heavy burden to carry in me. But on the way home you must not follow your intention to make your way across that certain square of the priests. For if my mother were to carry me past there, where by now about 100 of those buried in the rubble are lying upon mats, they all would suddenly return to life, and that would be a judgment for you and all the people, which would do great harm to everyone concerned. But this way they will be awakened throughout the night by means of human assistance under my secret influence. In this manner, the appearance of the miraculous will be avoided, and you and all the people will be spared from a judgment that kills the spirit forever." Cyrenius closely followed this advice, greatly gladdened in his heart. The litter was instantly provided, and Mary with the baby took place in the same, and Cyrenius chose another route by which the whole company, including the 3 priests, quite soon and very comfortably reached the villa of Joseph. Chapter 80. The Lord pinches those who love him. When he arrived at the villa, Joseph went directly to his sons, who just then were busy with the preparation of a noon meal, and said to them, "Good, good, my sons, you have anticipated my wish. But today we have 3 more guests, namely the 3 priests who early today were set out to die. These we want to treat exceptionally well, so they will become our friends in the recognition of our Father in heaven, who has chosen us to be his children through the covenant which he made with our fathers. You, James, go outside quickly to meet the mother who has become very tired, and relieve her of the baby dearest to us all, and put him to bed right away, for he also is noticeably tired and yearns for his cradle." James immediately ran out and went over to Mary, who was just getting out of the litter, and at once with great love and joy took the baby from her arms. The baby also returned the same great affection to James, for he frisked about on his arms, and smiled and pinched and pulled on him as much as ever he could get hold of him with his little hands. And the 3 priests, who were filled with the utmost respect of this child, were surprised and delighted in their souls, because they discovered something quite childlike in this child. One of them therefore went over to James and asked him in good Hebrew, "Tell me, is this most miraculous child of all children always so hearty? Yes, one might say even a bit teasingly rough, like ordinary children sometimes are, although not until they are 2 or 3 years old." Here the baby promptly answered in place of James, saying, "Yes, yes, my friend, those I love I also pinch, squeeze and tease. But that happens only with those who love me as my James does, and I love them as I love my dear James here. But I do not do them any harm for all that. Is it not so, my dear James? It does not hurt you if I pinch and squeeze you." At this James, quickly touched to tears as usual, said, "Oh, my divine, dearest little brother, how could you hurt me?" And the baby thereupon answered James, saying, "James, my brother, you do truly love me, and I love you so much that you will eternally never be able to quite comprehend how much I love you. See, my dear brother James, the heavens are wide and infinitely great. They include countless numbers of shining worlds of light, in relation to which the earth is only a drop of dew. And these worlds carry countless numbers of most happy beings of your kind. But among them, none is happier than you, now my dearest brother. At present you do not understand me, but in time you will understand me quite well. I do not want to sleep now, while the children of men keep watch about me, and with you, James, I shall remain." These words broke James's heart anew, and he wept for joy of love, and the inquiring priest nearly sank into the ground from sheer reverence and highest respect for this child. Chapter 81. A Great Prophecy for Rome. Cyrenius, who had also heard these words of the baby quite well, instantly went over to the baby and asked him in a most loving manner, "Oh, my life! Then you surely do not love me as much, for when I had you on my arms, you never pinched and squeezed me." Here the baby answered, "Cyrenius, do not be concerned about that. Behold, all the troubles which you have already endured for my sake were just so many pinches and squeezes by me, because I love you so greatly. Now do you understand what I have told you? For I shall indeed pinch and squeeze you still often enough, and from sheer love of you will be quite rough. But listen, you must not be afraid of me because of that, for no harm will come to you by it, just as has been the case up to now. Do you understand me, my dear Cyrenius?" And Cyrenius, while filled in his heart with the greatest respect of the child, said in a greatly crestfallen manner, "Yes, yes, my life. I understand you very well, and know what great things you have told me. But just the same, I still would also like to have you pinch and squeeze me a little, just as you do with your brother." And the baby said to Cyrenius, "Oh, my dear friend, you surely are not going to be more childish than I am. Do you really believe that I would love you more because of that? Oh, see, in that you are greatly mistaken, for I could not possibly love you more than I already love you. Truly, you will eternally never be able to wholly comprehend nor fathom the magnitude and depth of my love for you. Mark it well, less than a century will go by, when Rome will take possession of my citadel in great numbers. And while this time is still to come, I can assure you that you already stand on the threshold which will soon be tread by many. But understand, not in the body, but in the spirit in my future kingdom forever." These words of the child caused a great sensation among all those present, and Cyrenius did not know what to make of it. He therefore turned to the bystanding Mary, and asked her if she understood what the divine child had now foretold. And Mary said, "Oh, friend, if this were an ordinary human being, we human beings would also understand him. But because he is of a higher nature, we are unable to understand him. So let us keep all of his words within ourselves, for in time they will surely be revealed to us in their true light." Chapter 82. Here is more than Isis. Joseph now came out of the villa and invited the guests to the already prepared meal. Hereupon Cyrenius, filled with conflicting great thoughts, asked Joseph to come over to him and told him what the baby and then Mary had just said, and asked the good Joseph how this sort of speech were to be understood. And Joseph replied to the a little too disturbed Cyrenius, saying, "O friend and brother, are you not familiar with the myth which tells of the man who once wanted to lift the mantle of Isis?" Cyrenius, quite surprised at this unexpected question, said, "O noble friend, that myth is well known to me. The man perished miserably. But what do you want to tell me therewith in answer to my question?" Here Joseph answered Cyrenius, "Beloved friend, nothing else than, here is more than Isis. Therefore follow the advice of my wife, and you will fare eternally well." Moronius Pillar also stood close by and said on this occasion, "Consular, Imperial Highness, I know that I am usually quite stupid in such matters, but this time it seems to me as if I understood the wise man perfectly." Cyrenius answered him, "Good for you if you are convinced of that within yourself, but I cannot make that claim for myself just now." Usually my brain is not held completely in wraps either, but this time it will not serve me as it should. Here, Moronius said, as for me, I understand the matter like this. I must not reach for things too far away, for my arm is short for that. It would of course be quite an honour to be a blissful phaeton, but what is a weak mortal to do when the sun has orbited its course too far above him? He must be content with only her light, while he quite good-naturedly leaves the honour and power of leading the sun to those beings who surely have longer arms than he, the weak mortal. And just how long the invisible arm of this child is, we convinced ourselves of yesterday. So, Consular Imperial Highness, do I not exactly understand what this wise man has spoken? 21. Cyrenius agreed with Moronius, composed his heart, and in good spirits went into the villa with Joseph, and refreshed himself at the frugal meal. But the three priests hardly dared to keep their eyes open, for they believed that the child was either Zeus or even fate itself. Chapter 83. The Fear of the Three Priests. When the meal was over, and all had risen from the table, one of the priests went over to Joseph and asked him in deepest humility, Uranus, or at least Saturn, as father of Zeus, for that you surely are incarnate, although you attempted to hide your divinity before us a while back in the city, which you did only to test whether we would actually recognize you or not. Only for a time did we fail to recognize you, and for that we ask your forgiveness of our great blindness. But the recent manner of speech of your child has opened all our eyes, and we now know exactly where we stand. So make us happy to the extent of telling us how we shall bring you a sacrifice, as well as to your divine wife and to your child, who is surely the by your omnipotence self-rejuvenated Zeus. Joseph was amazed at this sudden change in the three priests, to whom, while they were still in the city, he had explained the false premise of their paganism clearly and quite comprehensibly. He therefore considered what he should answer them now. Here the baby wanted to be brought over to Joseph at once, and when he arrived there on the arms of James, he promptly said to Joseph, Leave these poor souls in peace. Do not rebuke them, for they are blind and sleep and dream. Just keep them here for a few days, and my brothers will undoubtedly awaken them from their sleep and dream. When they will see that you pray to God yourselves, they will surely forget their Uranus, Saturn, and Zeus. These words put Joseph completely at his ease, and he at once offered to let the three priests live under his roof until some way of enabling them to earn a living would present itself. The three priests, hardly daring to breathe for sheer awe, dared all the less to refuse the offer, since they did not have the least idea what they should do next. They therefore accepted the offer, but among themselves they murmured, Oh, if it were only possible to run away from here and hide in some remote corner of the earth, how happy we would be. But as it now is, we must remain here in full view of the obviously main gods. Oh, what anguish that is for us as those least worthy. Cyrenius noticed this murmuring among the three, therefore went over and wanted to call them to account for it. But the baby said, My Cyrenius, stay back, for it is not unknown to me what is taking place in the three. Their plan is the product of their blindness and their foolish fear, and concerns itself with nothing else than a flight from us into some most remote corner of the earth. See, that is all it amounts to, so you need not become concerned. Just leave the jurisdiction in this house to me, and be assured that no injustice will be done to anyone. Cyrenius was content with that, and again went into the open with Joseph, while the three priests went into the room assigned to them. Chapter 84. The Mythology of Ostracine. When they arrived in the open, Joseph and Cyrenius began to discuss several things among themselves, while Mary, in the meantime, took care of the baby in the house, and the sons of Joseph concerned themselves with looking after the chores around the house, wherewith the servants of Cyrenius rendered them various services. After several discussions of lesser importance between Joseph and Cyrenius, accompanied by Moronius Pillar, an important point came up for discussion, which was initiated by Cyrenius and was as follows. Worthy friend and brother, see, the city and the whole large domain which also comes under the jurisdiction of the city surely amounts to 80,000 people. Among them there are only very few of your belief and your religion. For thousands of years, according to my knowledge, they were more or less confirmed worshippers of idols. They have all of their pagan temples in this age-old city, of which the myth says that it was built at the time of the war of the gods with the giants of the earth, and that Zeus himself had it built as a symbol of the victory over these giants of the earth. Mercury had to gather the bones of the giants and sink them in the sea, which is how this land is supposed to have come into being. Over these giant bones, Zeus is then supposed to have let it rain sand and ashes, and now and then large and heavy stones. Thereupon, Zeus is said to have ordered the old Ceres that she should make this land fruitful and in its centre build a citadel and a city not too far from the sea as a sign of the great victory. Zeus himself would then bring forth from the earth a people which would inhabit this land and this city for all time to come. From this my story you can easily see that this people, probably like no other on the face of the earth, is still of the unshakable opinion that it inhabits the city which the gods themselves have built. For which reason you always see these terribly run-down dwellings, since no human being dares to make any repairs on the work of the gods, so he will not commit a sin against them. As something quite out of the ordinary, the old Ceres, assisted by Mercury and Apollo, is supposed to have built the temples with her own hands. That is the myth, and at the same time the so far unshakable faith of this otherwise good-natured people, which despite its poverty is very hospitable and exceptionally honest. But what is to be done here if this people should demand the reconstruction of the temples? Should one rebuild the temples for it or not? Or should one convert it to your doctrine? And if one does that, what will the neighbouring peoples who also visit this city on occasion say to that, since it has been all the more of a ruin than an actual city for a very long time? Chapter 85. Anxiety negates God's help. Cyrenius continued, O friend, that is surely a very difficult situation. If you have any counsel for that in the living chamber of your truly divine wisdom, then let me hear it. For the more I think about this matter now, the more critical and complicated it appears. And Joseph replied to Cyrenius, Listen to me, my esteemed friend. It is very easy to help you out of this predicament. I will give you some good advice in this matter, which will show you what is right and what you should do. See, in your heart, you are now of my living faith, and love and honour the one true God, along with me. Now I will tell you this. As long as you are filled with anxiety, God will do nothing for you. But as soon as you lay all your troubles upon him, and are only concerned and anxious as to how you may know and love this true God ever more and more, he will then begin to help you in all things, and everything which still appears crooked to you today will be made straight before you tomorrow. Therefore have this city cleared of rubble only wherever people might still be buried beneath it, which is now being done, but leave in ruins all other temples beneath whose rubble there lie nothing than at best a very few unshapely, worthless and smashed idols. For that which is destroyed by the elements counts as much with this blind people as if the gods had destroyed it. This people will therefore not even make the effort to rebuild these temples, for it is afraid that if it is active contrary to the will of the gods, it could draw a great punishment upon itself. Now there are no more such priests who, on the basis of a fictitious demand of the gods, would have undertaken this to their own advantage by the hands and means of the people, and those who still live will never build temples for idols. So you can be holy without concern in this matter. The Lord of heaven and earth will bring about that which is best for you and for the whole people. And in our time, several cities will meet a similar fate anyhow, in that they will be smothered with rubble here and there. So it will hardly be noticed when this old city becomes a complete ruin in 10 years. These words of Joseph comforted Cyrenius, and he returned to the villa with him in a happy frame of mind. Chapter 86. The world occasions no loss for the godly. When they entered the dining room, Cyrenius asked Joseph, "My very dear friend, see, a good thought has just come into my heart and my mind. What do you think concerning the matter which we discussed outside, and in which you undoubtedly gave me the best and most assuring advice? Would it not be conducive towards putting my soul completely at ease, if I were to ask the 3 here present priests for their opinion?" Joseph replied, "If my counsel still does not satisfy you, you are the master here and can do what you please to ease your mind, although I am of the opinion that not much is to be gained from these priests here as long as they hold me to be Uranus or Saturn, and the baby for the himself rejuvenating Zeus. When you accordingly ask them about that which concerns you, they will manifestly refer you to me and to the baby." When Cyrenius heard this from Joseph, he desisted from his wish and then said, "Now I see it all clearly. My feelings are completely at ease, and I can confidently dedicate my time to the business of state again. Evening is already here, so I shall return to the city with my attendants. But tomorrow afternoon I shall be with you again, and if I need any advice from you before that, I shall ask you to come to me still before noon." Joseph now blessed Cyrenius and Moronius, whereupon Cyrenius went to the cradle and very gently kissed the sleeping baby, then arose, and with tears in his eyes went on his way. On the way he looked back at least a few hundred times toward the villa, which was now worth more to him than all the treasures of the world. Joseph also sent one blessing after the other after Cyrenius, as long as he could still discover any trace of his party. When nothing more was to be seen of Cyrenius, Joseph went back into the house, and there to Mary, who just then, as was usual for her about this time, was deeply engrossed in prayer to God. But as soon as she noticed Joseph at her side, she arose and said, "Dear husband, truly, this day has totally upset me. The world, it holds no gain for man." And Joseph said, "My faithful wife, you are right. But I believe that as long as the Lord is with us, then we will not lose anything in the world either. So be of good cheer. Tomorrow the same old sun will again rise for us new and glorious. To the Lord alone be the glory forever. Amen."